Hello ladies and gentlemen, today I'm gonna be reacting to Game Theory and Matthew Patrick's show. The title is What is a Kirby? I know what it is. It's some sort of fabric ball or something. Alright, let's go. What the fuck?
Stuck in my throat.
It's fucking amazing. Yeah.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, providing you with your weekly serving of free-range organic brain food since 2011. Now, in case the title, thumbnail, and opening gag didn't give it away, today we're going to be discussing the playful pink puffball from Planet Popstar, the Warp Star Warrior, the dynamic Dreamlander, Kirby. For anyone that's unfamiliar with this series, and let's face it, if you don't know who Kirby is at this point, then you're going pretty far out of your way to avoid it. The Kirby franchise started back in 1992 with the initial entry Kirby's Dream Land, and has since launched over 24 games, selling over 35 million copies,
Holy
which is more
fuck.
than double Metroid sales and triple Star Fox. And here's the internet wondering why
Oh
Nintendo's so
my
slow to
God.
release more Samus games. Why create a sprawling space opera when all you gotta do to sell some games is give a pink blob the superpower of friendship? I mean, look at that. He's holding an umbrella to stop the water. Oh, it's so cute! Take my money, Nintendo! I love Kirby games. I love Kirby games, which may come as a bit of a surprise considering that this is the first dedicated Kirby theory since the yarn bombing episode, and that one didn't
Oh my
have
God.
anything to do with him. If you're new to this channel or missed that one, or just want cringe miss to come early,
Oh
watch
my
that
God.
one. Click the eye icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen.
That was the
You'll be-
time for
I don't know. Good luck. You will be mildly
that tank
entertained
covered
and
in
confused why people still think
that
Kirby
can
theory.
the tank covered
Anyway,
in
the
yarn.
holiday
That
season
was
always makes me think
fucking
of
weird.
Kirby. Kirby Superstar was my all-time
The
favorite
yarn
birthday
bombing. Oh
present
my God,
growing up.
that's
My birthday's in
fucking amazing.
November, so I associate with the holiday season. And two-player epic yarn around Christmas was the way Steph and I celebrated getting engaged when it was too cold outside in New York to do really anything else. So I wanted to take some time today to
Yeah,
look
let's
at
grab a
Kirby,
snow.
and I mean really look at Kirby, because what the heck is he supposed to be? Sonic is a hedgehog, Crash is a bandicoot, Mario is a homo Nintendo-ness, which is a whole nother episode. But Kirby is a, what, Popstarian? What exactly does that mean? We know that this is a universe with Earth on it, post-apocalyptic frozen over Earth, but Earth nonetheless, so it can't be too far outside the realm of our own biology. So I took to the internet, scouring the pages of the web for information, clues, anything that would help me scratch this itch, but to no avail. No one knows. Even Masahiro Sakurai, the creator of Kirby, claims to not know what his own creation is. Well, all of that ends today. What exactly is Kirby, you ask? Well, loyal theorists, brace yourself for this one because I think I've solved it. Kirby is a single-celled organism known most commonly as an amoeba. So grab yourself a hyperactive lollipop and
What
hop
the
aboard your Warp
fuck?
Star because it's long past time I tackle the science behind this sucker. Kirby's body is a strange one for sure, but it does have consistent behaviors throughout the series. For one, we know his body is elastic. Notice here that the force of him hitting the ground causes his body to shift to the side of impact, then bounce back to normal. It's a lot like a water balloon bouncing off the floor when it's dropped. When he runs, we clearly see that the force of the wind against his face deforms him a bit too. These details about his movement suggest that Kirby doesn't have a solid internal structural system and instead is just a giant ball of fluid. But we don't just have to guess that, we can actually scientifically prove it with an X-ray of Kirby. You might call
Ugh.
it Kirby's inside story. Different from
Ugh.
wrong and stupid.
Oh my God, this
But
is
you may be
weird.
asking me right now, How do you get an X-ray of a fictional character? Easy! The original
That was a
Smash
turkey, wasn't it?
Brothers. Yeah, of all places. In this game, and only in this game, when characters are electrocuted by Pikachu, you can see all of their skeletons. Hey, Captain Falcon, looks like you might be missing a rib or two there. Star Fox, I'm a bit concerned that your tail is literally one giant bone. But across the 12 characters in the game, 3 show themselves as not having a skeleton. Can you guess which 3? I'll wait, but not too long, because you literally have a pause button and you can just pause and think about it. Kirby!
Let's... Kirby... I don't fucking know. I don't know.
Is obviously one, because we wouldn't be talking about this if he did. Jigglypuff is another fairly obvious example. Well, you can see here for both of them, they clearly have no bones inside of them when compared to their bone-bearing opponents. And the third character, the one you might not have guessed, fun fact, is actually Samus, who doesn't reveal her skeleton, but rather her real body hidden inside of her spacesuit. Cool details, right? Now let's look at Kirby's arm hands. Hand arms? Let's just call them nubblies. Kirby's nubblies. Kirby's pictured holding objects like hammers, whips, and swords. In every single instance he's holding something,
Nubblies.
he never, ever
It's an amazing
sprouts
word.
fingers from his pink, stretchy, fleshy nubblies. Instead, it's almost like whatever he holds just sticks to him. But Kirby isn't just some sticky ball. He's making a choice to stick his nubblies onto these objects. Otherwise, anything he smacked, bumped, or ran into would stick to him. And I think it would be a very different game at that point.
Oh,
In fact,
God.
I know what game it would be at that point. It's a Katamari game. Katamari Kirby. Kirby Mari epic crossover. No need to pay me for the brilliant game idea, Nintendo. Just send me more of this
Katamari?
Mario Odyssey cereal. As if I didn't collect enough moons in that game. Moving further up on the Nubble, we see what's happening between his arm and his body. And it's kind of weird. Take a look at Kirby Return to Dreamland. In his running animations, Kirby just slides his hands up above his head, as if his nubblies are just rolling around on the surface of his body. They're not
You
in
seen
one fixed
Naruto?
position, like how our arms are attached at our shoulders, but
She?
rather the
He?
nubblies are able to shift
It's-
where on
it's
his
a
body
or
they're
single
spreading out
organism.
on,
I don't think
depending on the
that's
way
a
that he's using
sex,
them. This
but
is also
it's
found in
weird.
Kirby's Mass Attack and in Triple Deluxe, when he's floating, jumping, using the whip. Oh, and
Okay,
to make things
he's-
even more interesting,
He says
his
he,
swimming
so I
animation in
guess
Return to
it's
Dreamland shows his arms forming on
little
top of his
boy.
face and then sliding down his sides. All the while, his body maintains the same spherical shape. This would be like having your arms sprout out of your forehead so you could reach the last Diet Coke on the top shelf, and then being able to slide all the way down to your legs to reach the double stuffed Oreos you tucked
What
away
the
at the bottom
fuck?
of the
That
pantry.
would be
You know,
amazing.
hidden all the unhealthy food that you're trying to stay away
Weird,
from.
but amazing.
My nubbly arms have beaten this foolproof healthy eating plan. Can you guys tell I'm trying to get healthy? It's clearly not working. While we're examining Kirby's behavior in the water, there are 2 other things to note here. 1, he keeps the same shape even when inhaling, and 2, even though he can float by inhaling a bunch of air on the land, he actually sinks underwater. Now, you might be asking yourself at this point, hey MatPat, all of these things seem really pointless. How does all of this prove that Kirby is an amoeba? Well, once I start explaining to you the defining characteristics of an amoeba, it's all gonna start making a lot of sense. As I slid past you earlier in the thesis statement to this video, amoebas are single-celled organisms, meaning they're made up of one cell as opposed to us who are made up of billions of different cells. They're also eukaryotic, which means they have a nucleus that tells the cell what to be, what to do, and how to do it. It's like the brain of the cell. Additionally, the life of an amoeba pretty much consists of moving around in a constant search for something to eat. Starting to make a few connections? Well, how about we piece this thing together? Kirby's water balloon-like body told us that he had to be filled with some sort of liquid, allowing him to maintain structure while still causing the deformations of his body that we saw when running and falling. Conveniently enough, amoebas are filled with a fluid called cytoplasm, which allows them to maintain some level of structure
Okay, I
while
heard
still
of
giving
that.
them enough elasticity to change their shape. Amoebas move around and grab things using stretchy appendages called
Okay,
pseudopods,
science class,
Greek
okay.
for false foot, that can form anywhere on their bodies. Basically, a lot of cytoplasm moves to a certain part of the cell, pushes out against the cell's membrane, and boom! New appendage filled with fluid made from just a bunch of stretched out outer casing, much like Kirby's little nubblies. If Kirby were indeed a form of amoeba, it would explain how he's able to form arms above, behind, or even in his face, and still move his body without the use of a skeletal or muscular system. It would also explain his ability to selectively grab things that he wants from the environment around him. The science is a bit too complicated to get into right now, but basically amoeba have selectively permeable membranes, so certain things can pass through the cell and other things just can't. So likewise, Kirby could
What the
selectively
f-
choose
it has
to
a
grab things
fireball,
with his
a
nubblies,
bomb.
or just let him be neutral and stay outside his membrane at all times.
Let's
Don't
keep the
worry,
damn
if having an arm coming
cold
out of your
and
face wasn't exciting enough, there's
oh
even more
yeah,
benefits
Jesus
to the wonderful world of
Christ.
forming false feet all over your body. In multiple Kirby games, including Kirby Superstar, Return to Dreamland, and Kirby Triple Deluxe, Kirby has himself a guard ability. If you look at Kirby during this guard, he's just throwing up his arm and assumes a defensive stance. But how can he guard like this if he's just a big squishy water balloon ball?
You just
Well,
fire the
Amiiba
damn
Theory has an
metal.
answer for that too. When placed in extreme situations, amoebas are able to form cysts, basically like a thick layer of skin
Holy
that
shit.
hardens in order to protect
Oh my
themselves.
god, this
Since these aren't shown
crisis.
using a shield or some other form of protection, just as little nubbly, this has to be the only logical explanation for this ability. Otherwise, he'd just be getting his soft little nubblies cut off, and nobody,
It's
and
fucking
I mean
crisis
nobody,
too.
wants to lose themselves
Somehow.
a nubbly. Still
Without
not
that
convinced?
stupid,
Well, the
I guess,
Amoeba Theory
no.
accounts for yet
Never mind.
another oft-overlooked Kirby skill, division. In most Kirby games, but notably Kirby Mass Attack, he's shown being split into pieces with each piece still able to function. Not as a hive mind, but rather as separate individuals. Each Kirby is able to operate on its own and without the use of something giving it orders. So how would this work if he were indeed an amoeba? Well, as an amoeba, he only has one nucleus, which means that this would only work if a fragment of that nucleus happened to be in a part that got itself cut off. But what are the odds of that? Have I written myself into a corner? Have I disproven my own theory? Have I written too many rhetorical questions?
Nope.
No. Of course not. I'm adding all this in for dramatic effect. Are you sufficiently dramatized? Have I delayed this long enough? Was this a terrible meta moment for me to put in the first place? Yes, yes,
Jesus.
yes, and yes. Here's the big reveal. Generally, amoebas are microscopic, but there are some that are shockingly large. A Xenophyophore is a deep water amoeba that can grow up to 20 centimeters. That is 8 inches in diameter. Stop and think about that. That is the length of a fork for one cell. One cell. That is enormous! If you were to fill that one cell using a typical human cell, it would take 100 billion cells. And if you're thinking that's impossible for one cell with one nucleus to be that massive, well, you wouldn't be completely wrong. Where the typical eukaryotic cell has one nucleus that does one job, this bad boy has thousands, which would completely negate any need for precision when it comes to Kirby's multiplication, or should I say, Kirby's cellular division. Kirby can get cut into as many pieces as he has nuclei for, and he'd still be able to regenerate without breaking a sweat. But here's the kicker, the biggest twist of them all. Remember how I said that these things grow up to be about 8 inches in diameter? Well, according to Nintendo of Japan and Super Smash Bros., Kirby's official canon size, 8 inches. Mic drop. So yeah, if you're not convinced at this point, you're just being stubborn. Everything from his physical
No, I'm
attributes,
damn
the way he
convinced, but
moves,
the
way
thing
he
is,
holds things, the way he defends,
it's
the way he
weird.
attacks things, even how he can divide and still function can all be explained by him being a pink 8-inch sentient amoeba. But you know, there's still one
The
ability
Kirby's,
Kirby has that you might be waiting to throw back at me. One
It's a
thing
cell.
I tried to avoid this entire script. One piece of
It
evidence that I
destroyed
have
the
yet to
game.
reveal that will not only prove with absolute certainty that he is in fact an amoeba, but also answers one of the biggest mysteries surrounding Kirby. Nay, video games in their entirety. Yes.
Damn
I'm
it.
talking about Kirby's copy ability. Since the second installation of the Kirby series, he's had this inexplicable ability to ingest living opponents and copy their powers. While there have been a bunch of speculation as to how this all works, I'm about to hit you with the definitive answer. Kirby's special ability to copy is just an amoeba's special ability to perform endosymbiosis. If you break the name apart, endo means inside, and symbiosis is a really close interaction between two things. Put that together and wham! An interaction between two things that's formed on the inside. In the theory of evolution, it's proposed that one of the ways simple prokaryotic cells, or cells without a nucleus, turned into the more advanced eukaryotic cells is by doing just that. Endosymbiosis. Cells ingested one another and just started sharing abilities because it was evolutionarily beneficial. A great example of this can actually be found in our own cells right now. The little organelle inside your cell responsible for what is essentially energy production is called mitochondria. mitochondria. Mitochondria actually has its own DNA separate from the DNA of the rest of the cell. This lends to the theory that the mitochondria was, at one point in history, its own organism, and that a simple cell had ingested it. That cell gained the mitochondria's energy production ability by literally sucking it in and eating the mitochondria. Other traces of endosymbiosis can be found in a plant cell's ability to use oxygen to create energy. Oh, what's that? A new oxygen-rich atmosphere? Well, let me just eat a cell that can metabolize oxygen. A fuse that needs lighting? Glad this flamer enemy was around so I could suck it in, ingest it, and grab its flame breath. In the simplest terms, endosymbiosis is essentially an amoeba eating another living cell, obtaining whatever that cell had, and through a very complicated process involving the reading and writing of genetic codes, filtering out what it does and doesn't need, all in the name of survival. And when you stop and think about it, this is exactly what Kirby's copy ability does as well. He ingests the enemy, a living enemy mind you, and only takes what'll help him survive. Kirby doesn't eat a Waddle Doo and suddenly gain its giant eyeball because he already has eyes, and having two eyes is actually an evolutionary advantage. Instead, he gains the Waddle Doo's beam ability,
That's
something that
amazing.
will actually help him to survive.
That's fucking amazing.
Poof, DNA exits his body in the form of a
Matthew
star.
fucking
Kirby
Patrick,
the Star
holy
Warrior?
shit.
More like Kirby the Cell Warrior. But hey, it's getting close to the holidays.
This
So before
dude.
this episode ends and you run off to your holiday
Ah.
parties waving your spiral sliced ham over your head, why not pay less for that spiral sliced ham and a whole lot of other stuff that you're buying online?
It
Let
just
those last-minute
brought me some
presents
kind of
to
warm
your
happiness.
parents
It's
any
just,
day now, but you just keep putting off, and oh my god, is it only 48 hours until Christmas?
I mean,
And I still have nothing?
that he
How did this
just gets the
happen?
power he needs
I may or may
and
not be
doesn't
speaking from
get the
personal
disadvantage
experience.
from,
Anyway,
for
when you're
example,
shopping
one
for those
eye
gifts,
that
use
um,
Honey. It's the sponsor for today's episode. Honey is a free browser extension you can download
that
using
destroys
the link
the
in description
perception.
that
I mean,
literally
that's
scours the
amazing.
entire internet for all the promo codes, coupon codes, free shipping deals, everything that could possibly save you money when you buy stuff online. It is completely free all the time. You literally never have to
This
pay for
was
it in
Game
any way,
Theory.
like your own
What is a
personal
Kirby?
private Kirby. It
From
sucks
Matthew
up promos
Patrick,
online and
channel
automatically puts them onto
YouTube
everything that
Matthew
you buy.
Patrick
This is no
13.
joke. We over here at Theorist
Check
saved
it out.
$70 on a camera that we just bought.
I'm Citizen Hentai, and thanks for watching.